Biden's prosecutor, who left the DOJ and is now prosecuting Trump with Alvin Bragg's team, is now moving to smear Donald Trump with a list of what are called prior bad acts. Under the criminal rules, you're allowed to bring these things in under certain situations, and Judge Juan Merchan, we know, is probably going to be gratuitous with this request. We're talking about how they can impeach Trump. If he decides to take the stand and testify, what are they going to do in response? Well, they've got a big list of some nasty stuff that they've submitted, and you're probably going to see this in the media. They're all talking about it, kind of a smear job to say, well, even if we can't use this material, at least you know that we know about it and the media can talk about it. And then Judge Merchan will decide you can talk about that or this or that one, but not this one, and so on. So we'll go into that. But who is this guy? Now, Matthew Colangelo is kind of the hatchet man, maybe the mastermind behind a lot of these prosecutions. We know Letitia James, not that competent. In fact, all she did, as far as we know, during the civil trial was take her shoes off and stink up the whole courtroom, according to Alina Abba. And Judge Engeron was like, I love it. No problems. And he just kind of let this whole thing go astray in his courtroom. Very strange. So she didn't do any actual work. Then Colangelo, before he went to Tish's office, he was already over with the Obama DOJ. This is something he was there for a long time under Eric Holder. Then went over to Tish. Then was there, created a whole slew of prosecutions against Trump. Then left, went to the Biden DOJ. Many people like Julie Kelly and others say that he was the brains behind the Florida prosecution that launched that whole thing. And then he left and went over to Alvin Bragg's office, all prosecuting Trump. So that's the guy who is writing this ridiculous motion that we're going to take a look at before we get some reaction from Weissmann and Bill Barr, who's actually on Team Trump on this one. So we'll get to it. But here is what the filing looks like. And there's a lot of, nasty stuff in here. It's written by Matthew Colangelo, and it serves two purposes. One is to smear Trump in the court of public opinion. The other is to try to get this stuff in front of the jury. Now, we know who the jury is based on the prior segment, at least 7 of them. We still have a ways to go, but they want them to know every single bad thing Trump has ever done, okay? Every time that he didn't put the lid down, they want to know about it so that they can tell that to the jurors and look at all the women and say, see, you almost fell in because of him. Trump did it. So here is what Colangelo says. They call it in New York a Sandoval notice. They say the people hereby disclose a list of all misconduct and criminal acts of Trump that are not charged in the indictment, okay? So this has nothing to do with this case at all, but you just go around, you talk about all the bad things that you can find. And they say the people, Bragg and Colangelo, which is Biden's prosecutor, they intend to use at trial to impeach the credibility of the defendant pursuant to the law, right? So to impeach him, if Trump chooses to testify, then we're going to ask him about all of these following things. This is what they intend to ask. Now we can battle over this, right? So the defense will come out and they'll say, no, this is not relevant. This should be precluded. You can't talk about this or the other thing. But then it's up to Merchan, the judge, to decide whether or not to allow it. And it's going to be a free-for-all. We already saw this pattern, if Trump testifies, in the Tish case, where Engeron said that even if stuff was precluded by the statute of limitations, even if it was legally impermissible to talk about it, you could still talk about it to show a pattern in a course of conduct. So here, right now, what happens in all of these things is they parlay them, they snowball. You get Trump on a little bit of a legal problem, and then that parlays into another one. You just roll it over into the next one. So what I mean is, we're now at the criminal trial, and now they've got this entire dossier of other things they can talk about because they've been prosecuting Trump endlessly since 2016. So it's like their greatest hits list, right? And it's by Matthew Colangelo, which is why I spent time on this slide explaining who this guy is. He's been creating all of these for years. Everything we're about to go through, this dude's been involved in. He's like, yeah, I also prosecuted that one, and I led that one, and I led this one. Okay, so is a partisan prosecution. This is not a normal prosecutor. This is somebody who is making it their entire career to follow a solo defendant around, not working at 20 years in Manhattan or 20 years at the DOJ, following him around to take him out. That's not justice, my friends, in America. Democrats are insane to believe otherwise. So here is what he says. Here's what he wants to get in front of the jury, talking about the Tish case, which we know was a hack job, but he's going to say Trump was found by some due process to have done the following. He persistently falsified business records. So they're going to pretend like this was a legitimate case. And they also say Trump testified untruthfully. And because the judge Engoron, who is as corrupt as can be, says that Trump, his testimony was hollow and untrue. So the judge, Engoron, called Trump a liar, and so they're putting that in. Hey, we want to call Trump a liar too, because one of our hack judges gave us this excuse to do that. See how this works? Same thing happening here. Trump intentionally violated a court order, got fined $10,000 for talking about the judge's Greenfield that was sitting right next to him. We don't know where their hands were, if they were above the table or not, or below the table. We don't know. They moved the cameras though, according to the defense. So we don't really know. It's an open question. I don't know what was going on there. If they had cameras on, we could see. But since they moved the cameras, no, it's just, their word against our speculation. And so who knows? Defendant violated the order by failing to remove untrue, disparaging posts that Allison Greenfield was literally like hugging Chuck Schumer, right, in her photos, standing right next to him, at least, right, in the same photographs, running for office and all the things. We also have Trump committed persistent fraud. All of this is just fake stuff that they created out of thin air with Engoron. And now they want to use it in this trial because he rubber stamped it. Jury also award another fake case. Jury also awarded $83 million. Trump defamed her on that one. Lawrence Kaplan, another New York case. And they're going to say, okay, Trump also abused her. Trump made a false statement on True Social. Remember that she got more money for being defamed than allegedly from being pursed in a Bergdorf. It's insane. Trump versus Clinton. Court sanctioned him, ordered him to pay $1 million for a bad faith lawsuit, right? He sued Hillary. That one got dismissed, had to pay $1 million. Trump versus the corporation, or people versus the corporation. This is from 2022, probably when he was at Tish's office. Trump Corp and Trump Payroll convicted of fraud. Alan Weisselberg went to prison. Guess who's there? Colangelo. People by James versus Trump, another one. 2016, some $2 million for breach of fiduciary duty. And there was another stipulation about administration of charitable assets. So they just go, they drag everything out possible, and they try to smear him with it if he dares to testify. So all that got submitted by Joe Biden's prosecutor, an anti-Trump. It's actually probably really an Obama prosecutor, just does whatever they say. And so the people's motions in limine already disclosed the misconduct and the uncharged criminal acts, which we're going to use as substantive proof here. But to the extent that the court concludes in resolving those motions in limine that the identified acts may not be admitted as proof, the people hereby give notice we intend to use these acts to impeach the credibility of the defendant, if you'll let us. And of course, the question is on these things, is it relevant? Does it matter to the case? Is it more prejudicial than probative? Is it more harmful to the case? Does it help the jury decide the issues, or does it just bring them confusion? So we'll see what Merchan does. Anything to hurt Trump, I think he'll allow in, which is basically all of those. So we'll see where it goes. Of course, that is from Colangelo. And not only that, right, not only are they trying to use their fake hack prosecutions that were governed by Engoron and Kaplan to snowball this, they then gag him, require him to be bogged down at trial for 6 weeks in the middle of a campaign. But then even when Trump goes out and says something to the media, they are going to use that against him, right? You've heard it in the movies. Anything you say or do can and will be used against you in a court of law. So here's Weissmann and these weirdos on MSNBC giddy about this. Every time he comes out and makes a statement, they just say, oh, good, he's incriminating himself. He's making an admission that's going to cause more evidence to be available to use against him in the court of law.
I used to say, good luck to you. That's, I don't think is going to fly. But I just thought it was fascinating that he couldn't keep the story straight, which has got to be the accountant did it, I didn't do it, but he started out by saying, this is what I did. That is not going to be great. It'll be interesting to see whether the prosecution actually tries to use that, because it's an admission. That tape that you just played is something that is potentially admissible.
And he's going to do some version of that pretty much every day out there.
Just to be clear, we saw that when Rudy Giuliani did that, and the evidence of what he said outside of court was played in the civil case, the civil defamation case that he lost. The same thing happened in the E. Jean Carroll case, where all those statements are admissible. They're admissions. And so this is one where you're seeing, again, no client control. And so he could really hurt himself. But, he only has himself to blame.
Only has himself to blame. You guys are prosecuting him in the middle of a political campaign. You all orchestrated that to happen. In fact, Judge Merchan was colluding with Judge Chutkan to get it done. Her case was supposed to go forward. Then when it didn't go forward, they had a phone call or whatever, however they communicated. And suddenly he brought his case back up from the dead. Interesting how that works. And they all timed it to coincide with the election because they don't want him to speak. If he defends himself against this, they'll just use it against him, and they'll gag him and threaten him with contempt for even responding to any of the other people who can talk about it. And if he does it again, they'll threaten him with jail. That's the Democratic Party in America. That's who these people are. They think this is fair. They think that they're non-biased. They think they're unpartisan, and they pat each other on the back over it. So here now is Bill Barr, who is going to be right for once in a while. He is. Here's what he says.
I've said from the beginning, this case is an Abomination. You know, it's obviously political, 7 years after he pays hush money to try to come up with this case. It's also, as you say, it's not only far-fetched, they're trying to predicate it on a federal crime, which wasn't prosecuted, and they're wrong about it. This was not a campaign contribution. They're just wrong on the law. But to me, this shows that the real threat to liberty, the real threat to our system are the excesses of the progressive left. They're perverting the system of justice, and, you know, that's where the danger lies, the corruption and subversion of our institutions by the left.
Yeah, and a lot of that wouldn't be happening if we had an actual investigation into 2020, which is where the perversion of all of our institutions ultimately started. And that led to J6, which resulted in a further corruption and any faith in our institutions. And so the snowball continues to roll down the mountain. But Bill, you were in there for a while. You could have stopped some of this and you didn't.
Just call this hush money case outrageous. And I also know you've been asked many times, you've had your disagreements with the former president. He's the presumptive nominee. We assume he will be the nominee. Will you support him in 2024?
Well, I've said all along, you know, given two bad choices, I think it's my duty to pick the person I think would do the least harm to the country. And in my mind, I will vote the Republican ticket.
You will.
I will support the Republican ticket. I think the real danger to the country, the real danger to democracy, as I say, is the progressive agenda. And I said, Trump may be playing Russian roulette, but continuation of the Biden administration is national suicide.
That is true. You're right, man. You can't disagree with that. It is a national suicide. And it's a wild to think about that. But it's a bizarre world to realize that people might go into the polling booths and say, this is great. Everything that's happening right now is great. I love all this conflict in the Middle East. Love paying $25 for a turkey sandwich. Love unfettered illegal immigration. I hate having a sound currency and a functional dollar. I love having a president who's sniffing kids, doesn't even know where he is, leading our country and being a symbol of America. Great times ahead. Can't wait to vote for Joe. What on earth? Who are these people? So Biden Prosecutor Matthew Colangelo now increasing the pressure, trying to say if Trump testifies, they're going to try to smear him with a bunch of this. Trump will have a response, of course, when that drops. We'll be here to cover it. And so thank you for joining us as we do, my friends. Don't forget to subscribe wherever it is you're watching this. Really great way to make sure we can stay connected. Thanks for inviting someone over that you know or love to come and join us when we go live. We also have great links down in the description below, including our members only community, where we go live in the mornings talking about a bunch of other stuff that we can't squeeze in here on the live streams. And we do streams on Saturday as well. So come and check it out. watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have an amazing community. We want to see you become a part of it. We'll see you over there and back here on the next one.